I'm not Jesus Christ. I can't turn water into wine, okay? If you don't know your numbers, there is no hope for us. And I tell you, based on my short history as a dedicated business coach, the guys that don't monitor the metrics are the guys that don't go the distance. The guys that don't know their numbers don't go the distance. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Business for Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. Great to have you along for the ride. My name's Max. I'm your host, CEO and president here at Smith & Sons Canada and the ambitious founder of EliteBusinessAdvisory.com, where I provide customized contracting for, customized coaching for contractors. Anyway, good to have you in the house. If you're a first-time listener, I appreciate you just stopping by, dropping in. And if you're a long-time listener, appreciate the ongoing love, and I trust that you will get something out of today's episode also. Right, let's get cracking. Like and subscribe, hit the bell. One of these drops every week, and want to make sure that you get away with some value. Now, this is the month of February 2025. Obviously, being a new year, people tend to talk about strategic planning, and I'm all about that. That's fine. I just want to just back up. Last week, we talked a little bit about the difference or cash flow, things like that. I think profit, I was leaning on. But I really want to talk about, to that end, and for this month, I guess, I could be just talking about cash flow, profit, back costing, all that sort of stuff. And so just continuing on from the last episode, I'm going to chat with you today about, accelerating your receivables with proper terms, clear payment terms, controlling your controlling your expenses and overextending yourself, what not to do. And then, of course, cash flow forecasting and planning. This is something that I'm pretty sure that most people don't do specifically. And if they do it, they maybe don't identify it. And it's a really basic spreadsheet. It's not rocket scientist. It's just in the doing. But, I've had clients just say to me, it's like because I do ask a lot of them. Like, this is guys and gals that are just on the tools for the most part. Like 50% of the time they're building stuff, and the other time is made up with meeting clients and running around picking materials up and doing quotes and all that sort of stuff. And so, when I start talking to them about business management and financial management or financial mechanisms that really are geared, sure, it's about, we want to have a better business. Yes, we do. But at the end of the day, I've got to preserve the human, okay? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to buy time in the week back. For every 40 hours, we are trying to go, right, I need to get A, more done in that 40 hours, and B, I've got to make sure that I'm doing and I'm focusing on high value targets. Okay. So really it's just, but then to navigate your way through that, to negotiate the process in achieving that, I've definitely had more than one client look at me and go, mate, I'm so busy. My head is just full of shit that I've got to do. And so that speaks to me at a high level as far as, okay, the human is under pressure. Now, when the human's under pressure, the human doesn't really, or has the potential to get paralyzed by the analysis. And it's tangible. The feeling is tangible. If you know what that feels like, nod your head. Now, okay, play along with me. But, I know that at that point, there's that sense of overwhelm. And at that point, you need to back up and just try to separate yourself from what's going on. What I'm trying to do in the business world probably is not recommended. For me to have 3 corporate portfolios, or one portfolio with 3 companies in the construction related arena, it's not probably something that I would suggest anybody does. It's just where I found myself. And there is an ultimate goal, but it just at this point, this is what's got to be done. Now, is it going to be where I live? Absolutely not. We've got systems. And so what the challenge is now, we've got systems, we've got to find a human. So it's about now recruiting, putting good people on the bus with the right attitudes, behaving the right way and complementing the overall culture of the business and the direction and the goals. So, you know, for me, you know, for you to hit that sense of overwhelm, there has to be something. You've got to start, you know, I think Alex Hormozy talked about the definition of a person who knows what they're up or what they're about is their ability to say no. And so, you know, as much as we talked about, you know, fixed expenses last week, we're going to have a quick, we'll cover that as well, obviously, but today, you know, we've got to look at and do an audit and go, okay, I haven't got time for that. Now, I'm not saying that you never come back around and do that. Like for me, I've had to have some discussions. Just to my point, I recently sent a text message to my bandmates saying, hey, fellas, I feel like I'm holding you back and I probably can't be in this band anymore. Now, it was just the demand. I just made a decision. I'm like, really, the definition of a human is what you can say no to. And you know how I feel about playing music, but when I look at where they want to take the band, I don't know that I was complementing that pace. Like they were asking me, because that rock and roll band project is just a mistress. You know, it's not really part of the core of my life. Like if it went away, it doesn't really affect me at all. I've still got my jam space and all my guitars and whatnot. So, you know, what happened was and I appreciate this. This just goes to show that when you're in business, and that band is show business, and when they come to me and say, look, what can we do to understand that, you know, and they're in another band each. I'm not, but I said I'm running company, which might as well be, the demand on me is exponential. And they just said, well, what can we do to keep you around so that you can manage it? And see, that's what it came down to, is management. So I was able to I didn't make an excuse. I said, guys, I'm holding you back. Look forward to seeing what you do. Go get it done. Go replace me. And then they're all very generous, and they come back to me and say, we don't really want you to do that. What can we do? And so, you know, that to me speaks to the quality of the humans that are in that rock and roll band, that they were actually prepared to, you know, make some changes as far as the outcome goes so that they could accommodate me. And I'm like, they're really good humans. Like that's the kind of behavior, that's the kind of people that we want to be in business with in our business, you know, that kind of humans. But ultimately your ability to say no to some things. And so if you're feeling that sense of overwhelm, then you might need to take stock of what you're doing each week and make some adjustments. And that's all I can say. You need to be a big boy or a big gal and figure out really what it is that you've got to jettison to make some space. Now, what I would also do is take a look at what you're thinking about and get it down on paper. And then once you've got that list, to be able to then prioritize things, because you can only do one thing at a time. And so I think what I do is I compartmentalize well. If there's one thing that I probably do pretty well, and that is I compartmentalize, and I can pretty much like zone in on one objective at a time. Even though I've got peripheral stuff that's there, I'm just like, right here and now, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this out. And I just don't let anything distract me. I can't afford it, because if I do let it get in, I'm never going to get anything done. Okay. So, all of these kinds of things is what it takes to really, if you are going to grow. Now, understand this too. You know, I think this is a couple of episodes ago. Success lies outside your comfort zone. So if you think you're just going to stroll through this business development, learning curve, educational process, and physical outworking and implementation process like easily, you are absolutely kidding yourself. It ain't going to happen. So put your helmet on and your mouth guard in, because, you know, I'm in North America, and just expect that life's going to get tougher. If building business was that easy, building systems within your business, recruiting people, landing clients, which I think I talked about last episode, and we all struggle with that. And so it is challenging. So we've got to just pick one thing to narrow down on and get it done, because I'm telling you, there's a little bit of happiness that comes, or some satisfaction in achieving something where you go, I was disciplined enough to get that done. And I often make references. Obviously, I'm in the franchise world in the construction sector, but I often look at, you know, restaurants, and I just think to myself, I've got to run my building company like it's a franchised hospitality company. So people walk through the door, they give us the order, we get the ticket digitally or hard copy, whatever the system is, and it just hangs on the wall, and they're standing there waiting for the product. Now, in building, that's a lot different, okay? It's bigger ticket items. It's not a $12 meal deal. And so, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is understand that we do have an acceptable amount of time to get a quote back to the client, preferably one that's paying me to do the quote. But in due process, we just can't stop. Like, we don't have you can't ignore that person that's standing at the front counter waiting for their $12 meal deal. And yet I know guys inside and outside of Smith & Sons that just kind of go off into la-la land and they just stop talking to their clients. And so, I circle back around and like whether it's a warranty claim or whether there's someone needs a maintenance thing done, that they can handle directly with the manufacturer or the provider, the sub or whoever, I'm still staying in touch regularly, weekly, like communication at the highest level. That's where it's at. So, I think that we've got to really nail down on some of our systems and how we go about execution. Now, we either execute what we've got or we get rid of some stuff. It detonates, we just blow it up and get rid of it, or we delegate that, which means we need systems. So you've got to really do some soul searching. There's only so much that a business coach can do. There's only it's your business. It's not my business. And so for you've got to start being honest with yourself about, okay, what's happening in and around my company, and why am I starting to hate clients? Why am I starting to butt heads with subcontractors? Why is the quality not there? Like all these kinds of things that are very unique to your business, because you're the one who's leading it. This is why I've said before, like the speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. So, if you have the inability to communicate under pressure. So you might be one that doesn't enjoy confrontation as much as I do, that can think straight under pressure like I do. Then you're going to find it tough, because in the building game, you've got to really exude firmness, and you've got to do it with courtesy. Now, if I get attitude from someone, then maybe some of that courtesy goes out the window and we start having real talk. So the construction game is hard. It's challenging. Oh boy. Okay. So we're talking about how to really create and control expenses, look at our account, accelerate the receivables, control our expenses and our forecasting of the cash flow. So clearly I was, on a bit of a tangent there, but something like do you have the ability, does your system have the ability where clients, and how I feel, all of my invoices go out due upon receipt. Now, do I normally give them a couple of days to pay? Of course I do. But if we're getting to that 3 or 4 day point and I'm relying, remember we're talking about cash flow management, income, making sure that we've got money to pay our sub-suppliers, etc. If their bad behavior is putting pressure on me when it shouldn't, then what I've got to do is I've got to get clients motivated to pay me on time, because they want their job finished on time, but they think they can negotiate, and delay payment. It doesn't work that way, okay? So, to ensure that our receivables, the money coming in, is accelerated, we might have to consider talking to our bookkeeper, whoever does this, about either late fees or interest on overdue payments beyond, 7 days or something like that, whatever you come up with. But what I'm trying to do is that homeowners get busy living their life, and then they never circle back around, because it is a bit of a pain point to pay us general contractors and builders, even though we've been working our ass off to bring it, to bring the project along, just like they'd expect. When it comes to getting some love, they all of a sudden think that paying us maybe is optional, or certainly paying us on time is optional. And that's not the case. So we've got to make sure that if we're going to accelerate our income or our receivables, our AR, then we have clear payment terms. And guys and gals, we've got to establish the rules of engagement with the client. If they don't know about change order policy, and then you go into a change order, you've got to start educating the clients all over again as it relates to your change order protocol. Now, the next point I'll bring up is the change order. Let's say you don't have a change order protocol. You've got to be able to point out, educate, and explain to clients what you're doing. Because what it's going to do is create a bottleneck in your cash flow, because all of a sudden you might have spent 15 grand on a change order and they're like, what do you mean it costs us? What do you mean 15 grand? Where's that? Well, you told me you want a change order, right? See, like that, all of a sudden now I've got this massive cash gap because I pity you if that's happened to you, and maybe it has. And I'm telling you, based on the pain, you'll probably never do it again. But, that's what can happen if you're just nonchalant. You get a handshake. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Like you've got to know what you're banging on about, and you've got to know why. So when I lay out our 13-page contract, it's not all about protecting me, because I'm telling you, Canadian Home Builders, who else mentioned this? If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. I think it was Canadian Home Builders, but they said something much the same, that you've got to get these things in writing, because otherwise the contract is the rules of engagement, guys and gals. And so inside of our 13-page contract, we've got a change order policy. That's the rules of engagement as it relates to change orders. Now, inside of that little section, inside of that 13-page contract, there's little 2 spots for initials and a date. So not only do they sign the overall contract, but they're signing off on the fact that I gave them education around what our change order process is. So that's what we've got to do. And so when it comes to the change order, the goal is they go, yep, I know what the process is. Yep, we approve the change order proposal. Yep, here's the check in advance because that's what you've asked for, and I appreciate you waiving the $250 change order fee. See, everyone knows what's going on. And then what we do is we get the check and then we move on. So we're minimizing the impact that change order, because it can have a negative impact on the momentum in the project. And so when you've got the rules of engagement spelt out clearly, you accelerate your receivables. Right. Obviously, controlling expenses and avoid overextending. So let's, I talked about that last week. Let's talk about fixed expenses real quick as a percentage. Now, I want you to do some mathematics for me, Mr. and Mrs. Builder, or Mr. or Miss Builder, Miss Builder. What I need you to understand is that, we talk about markup percentages, and I think I can turn the average builders or general contractors' heads inside out when we start talking about markup and margin. Now, the markup is all that you're worried about. You're like, Max, I do cost plus 10%. I'm like, I'm not sure how you build a business and a life out of that, but, mazel tov. But you might say to me, oh, but Max, I do a markup of 25%. I'm like, excellent. So we know what the markup is. That is the activity, the action. It's what creates the profit. Now, what I need to know is as a percentage of the sale price, what is the profit margin? What is that profit as a percentage of the sale price? That's called the profit margin percentage. And the reason I need to know that is because if you say to me, Max, I mark up by 25%, that creates a 20% profit margin. What I do is I take that 20% profit margin and I take your fixed expense. So let's say it costs you $15,000 to run your business. I would divide that by a 20% margin, and that will tell you what your business has to invoice every month for to break even. Okay. So if I had a calculator, I don't have a calculator here, but if you do the math on what your fixed expenses are, it needs to be realistic too. Okay. And of course I have this conversation with many people about, well, I've got carpenters working for me. Their cost of goods sold, they're not fixed expenses. And I'm like, bro, worst case scenario, they are fixed expenses, because if the work runs out, their employment continues, you got to pay for them. So you might as well make it worst case scenario and add all the boys' wages to your fixed expense. It's your payroll. It is an operating expense. It is not a cost of goods sold. I know they're handling the cost of goods sold portion of the work. What it's going to do is it's going to drive up your profit, because, you can use that analysis in doing the back costing for the project. But when it comes to analyzing the finances of the business, their operating expenses, okay, don't argue with me. Right. So we've got to know. So we take our fixed expense, divide it by a profit margin. Now you might say to me, well, Max, I just, I mark up kitchens only by 10% and I mark up, my labor by 25% or whatever. But problem is we've got to get an average. The reason why I want consistency in markup percentages, so it produces a consistent profit margin percentage, because then I need to use that profit margin percentage in my monitoring the key activity in the business, the activity key metrics, we call it. And so if you don't know what that dollar amount is, and this is the mind-blowing moment of this podcast. If you don't know what your profit margin percentage is, now it could be worst case. You go, Max, well, I don't mark up kitchens as much, but overall it's this. And I'm like, okay, just give me the worst case scenario. Right, it's 20%. Right, if you don't know what that is, and you don't know down to the dollar what your fixed expenses are, how do you know what your break-even point is? Now, just those three things alone, and I get a little bit passionate here because, you know, I'm not Jesus Christ. I can't turn water into wine, okay? If you don't know your numbers, there is no hope for us. And I tell you, based on my short history as a dedicated business coach, the guys that don't monitor the metrics are the guys that don't go the distance. The guys that don't know their numbers don't go the distance. They just don't build anything. They hit a ceiling. They're the limiting factor because I'm asking them to discipline themselves and to pay attention to the detail, and they don't. And then yet they'll turn around and they'll want high-level performance and detail out of their team, whether it's subs or suppliers or their own payroll guys. That's inconsistent leadership, guys and girls. And I've done, you know, over 400 SOPs, got them put together, and that's across 9 departments. There is a 10th department. It's leadership. And it starts with personal leadership. I've got to be able to lead myself. If I can't discipline, this whole bullshit about do as I say, not as I do, I don't know. I got some issues with that. You know, I'm not going to follow someone who's, you know, talking out both sides of their mouth. You know, over here he's behaving this way and over here he's doing this. You know, if I get called out on that, I deserve it. And if I take it the right way, I can get better. And so that's the leadership side of the business, which you need to focus on. So if you don't know what your profit margin and percentage is categorically, right, and you don't know what your fixed expenses are, you're definitely not going to know what your break-even point is, and therefore you're not even going to understand. And here's the kicker. You're not even going to understand what your target is this month. Guys, if you want to invoice for 50 grand a month today, you should have been selling 50 grand a month 3 months ago, minimum. Think about that today. Right, okay, if my break-even point is, and I'd love to have a calculator, give us your phone, Dom. Give us your phone, give me the calculator. I'll do this right now. This is live, okay? And this will be exactly why you do it. So let's say you've got fixed expenses of $10,000, and they're sort of round numbers. So 10K per month. You can follow along with me at home if you want to do that. 10K per month, and then I'm going to divide that by a 20% margin. So I take $10,000 and I divide that by 20%. That equals $50,000 a month. 50K per month, right? Do it at home. $10,000 a month, divide that by 20 and then hit the percent button. Or you could probably do that. Yeah, anyway, you'll figure it out. Divide that by 20 and then hit the percent button. It's 0.2, 50,000, right? What that's saying to me is that's my break-even point, okay? Then what I would say to you is then what you do is you would add, if we want to come up with a net profit somewhere between 8 and 12% at the end of the year, if you're a builder, if you're a sub-trade, this is not relevant. Like you're going to run a bunch of different activity key metrics, okay? But then if I want to say, okay, at the back end of the year, I'm going to create a 10% net profit. Then what I need to do, that's a break-even point. So at this point, you're making zero net profit. Some guys would go, geez, if I could just break even, that would be freaking awesome. 50,000, and then I add, so I want to add plus 12%. So that's adding another $6,000 onto that, plus $6,000 per month. Now I'm at 56,000, right? So that's what I would call my preferred billables. Is 56,000. If you're running a business with 10,000 all in truck payments, which is probably not really the truth. If I'm forecasting for one of my franchised operators, it starts at 15K. Right now, here's the drill. Here's the difference. Let's go. This is for a privateer, let's say, private guy. Okay. Now, if I go into a Smith & Sons franchise and I'm saying, right, it's 15K, but per month, but my profit margins, let's say our goal is to get 30%. So we're marking up by 43% and it's 30%. So I go 15,000. So I'm $5,000 in my projection more than a $10,000 private guy. 15,000. Divide that by 30%. Now that's $50,000 as well. Did you notice that? Did you just see that? You've got an increase of running expenses by 50% from 10,000 to 15,000. But because I increased my profit margin from 20% to 30%, my break-even point is exactly the same. Now, if that ain't some financial witchcraft and sorcery for you to think about, I don't know what is. Okay, so that's my BE, that's my break-even point. And the same thing applies. I add, so I go plus 12% and I get the same $6,000. So it's $6,000 a month, all because I can actually, my operating expenses went up 50%, but because I increased my profit margin, right, my preferred billables, my preferred monthly billables are exactly the same. Now, like I might have said before, that to do that, you've got to qualify better. Not like me. I talked about the last episode, how I went and I liked the client, I liked the job, I didn't talk about the money, and it bit me in the ass. Okay? So we need to make sure that we're thinking about what's happening in the business and the dynamics, and that you know your numbers, right? So now I look at that and I go, okay, I look at the fifth factor I'm looking at then is if I've just increased my operating expenses, I'm on the hook for more money. I've now increased the profit margin percentage from 20% to 30%. That means I'm going to miss out on more deals. Now I've got to know what my conversion rate is. So this is the other one. What is my conversion rate from lead to contract? Then sometimes we look at also from when I present a bid to a contract. So I get the two metrics. So some of my guys might convert 80 to 90% when they get someone the final quote, as opposed to from the initial lead to the job, it's more like 20%. Okay. So this is knowing your numbers far out, So if you got any questions on that, email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. Okay. Or get across to elitebusinessadvisory.com, hit the book a consultation and chat with me about your business. Okay. While I'm on this tangent, I've had a couple of emails recently, and certainly over probably the last 6 months to this effect, where guys aren't in a position where they're either running their building company or they can afford to have customized individual coaching, okay? But they are definitely they're open to a more of a group coach. Now, I'm willing to consider this. So we'll run maybe a 90-day program. I haven't established exactly what it is, but it's something that I've had my eye on because, the barrier to entry for customized coaching is significant. It's financial. It's a lot of money. And I am at the lower end of the game, for real. So there's guys out there, there's companies out there, 50 to 75 grand a year to coach you custom one-on-one. And I'm definitely not up that at all, right? And, going into customized coaching in a group setting, that might be your stepping stone into starting your building company and then moving into a position where you can afford to get some customized coaching one-on-one, which I think will help you enormously. So there's just a really quick insight. All right. So that was sort of point two. We want to make sure we've got tighter control over our subcontractor and material costs, ensuring that they align with your budget. And look, I'm telling you, I would hope that you're the kind of individual that makes a mistake and then says, I'll never do that again. Okay. Now I'm going to finish off real quick here in the next 3 minutes and about cash flow forecasting. What I want you to do, okay, you don't need to come and talk to Max and be an elite business advisory, contractor coach, right? What I need you to do is to think about a spreadsheet where down the left-hand side, you've got a list of all of the projects. And then across the top, you've got a list of the months. And then, of course, each of those projects have got stage claims, I think, normally if you're a fixed price lump sum builder, or if you've got cost plus and you can forecast where the Joneses job in the month of XYZ, there's a $10,000 payment there, there's another $10,000 payment. Now, they're in 30-day increments, right? So you don't have to be, you don't have to be so micro with them. Because what I'm trying to look at is my bills are due and payable at the end of the month. So I've got to look at two things. When's the money coming in? Because I know how much money's going out. So, guys, we've got to look at, and what that's going to help you do is identify the months that aren't just going to produce enough cash flow, okay? So if you're using that kind of cash, it doesn't have to be a super dramatic, out of control thing. I'm telling you, a spreadsheet. Part of our activity key metrics in Elite Business, the next page is a cash flow forecasting tool, okay? And then, of course, we've got our project start schedule as well, which basically tells us how many jobs we've got stacked on top of each other at once. And it is not deep. I mean, the guys that are listening to this that know that have either been my clients or are still currently my clients, they go, yeah, it's not technical. And it's not, because if I make the barrier to entry so difficult, They just, it doesn't, I think I've talked about this either on a podcast or I've mentioned it, that if I make the information so overwhelming, what happens is the value drops out of the whatever it is that I'm presenting. They just go, oh, it's too much drama, and they just move away from it, even though the thing is valuable. The problem is that because of the overwhelm, it just instantly devalues in their mind, and I can't have that. So again, as I talked about, it's just overwhelming to all of this monitoring and knowing your numbers is the challenge. Welcome to the 12-month Change Your World program, because that's what it's going to take. Okay. Regularly update your forecast to reflect changes in project timelines, because shit happens, guys, doesn't it? We know that. Changes in, your unexpected costs or changes in the payment schedule. Now, some of those changes in the payment schedule might be change orders. Like, that's going to increase the revenue for that month. That needs to be documented and included as well. All of that is to give you the sleep at night factor. Guys and gals, look, drop me a comment. If you like the show, I'd love it if you leave a review, whether it's, 1 star or 5 star. I'm sorry if you're not getting anything out of it and you hate it. I'd love to have a chat with you about you and your business as it relates to customized coaching for building contractors and builders. And if you are interested, and you go, hey Max, what's that about this whole group coaching? I'm actually going to run one for the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, for obvious reasons, right? And so just hit me up on email, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. Go to the website, elitebusinessadvisory.com. My mug's up there. You'll know that you're in the right spot. And shoot me an email and just give me an expression of interest, because I've not rolled anything out. I've got some stuff, at my disposal that I could put into a 90-day or 120-day program, whatever the case may be, whatever I think's appropriate. And I want to make the price point so that I want you to feel some pain. You've got to apply yourself, because you are going to have to do some work, probably between 1 and 5 hours a week for that 90-day, 120-day period. And if you think you've got the chops to do that and you've got a little bit of cash up your sleeve you can throw at it, then just shoot me an email and just go, Max, I'm pretty interested in your, I was even going to call it the EBA Young Guns. Who knows? Because most of these emails are coming from guys and gals in their 20s. So I'm throwing that out there. I haven't rolled that out. It's just something that's come across because I believe that for builders to be in, tomorrow's builders need to get the right education today, and it is not happening in our system currently. And then guys like me go and talk about it. And of course, the fee for service is outside the capabilities financially of our 20 and maybe early 30-year-old guys. It's just, we've got to do something about that. But understand, what you get customized is far superior, let's say, that's applicable. But if you're not, and it's appropriate to a guy running his company right now. Okay, if you're not running a company and just thinking about getting set up, it's actually more of a startup. It's a pre-launch program. And I think that can go a long way to really helping you establish and putting the right things in the right places before you actually go down the track. And you might even get to a point you go, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I've invested in that. I've got the education, but I don't think I'm up to it. I'm just going to go and work for another builder. And that's a good thing too, because that will then minimize the failure rate. So good on you guys. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell. One of these drops every week. Great to have you in the house. I trust you've got something out of that. You go and build your kick-ass business. Change your world, and I will see you in the next episode. Cheers.